One. Well, welcome everyone back.
Heyo.
Welcome Aaron. Welcome watchers, viewers. I have continued my redecorating process here. We have this wonderful cross. It was given to me. It has it's you can't really see it from here, but it's got pussy willows on it, sort of like an Easter thing, and and I got to get my directions right. Okay, I'm onto another wall now. I was pointing this out to Aaron earlier. And this is, I'd forgotten I even had this T-shirt. It's laundry day. All right, I need to move. This is my new coronavirus T-shirt, where it's just a sloth going nowhere fast. All right, sloth riding a turtle. We're all just kind of stuck at home.
The passage of time recently.
Yep. So how are things going over at the Neff residence? Uh you kind of blacked out there for a second. How are things going over by you?
Um, yeah, they're going okay. You can probably see a little bit. My bookshelves are
Bare shelves.
all uh all empty, so we're packing up some stuff
I should have
here.
done that before I moved this one. Honestly, that would have been the smart thing to do.
It's easier. It's easier on the back, that's for sure.
A little easier, yeah. All right.
Book boxes are heavy though.
Yeah,
But things
yeah. Welcome.
yeah,
As
no,
a
things are going well. Yeah.
an inexperienced college freshman, I remember I had this massive gray plastic trunk, and I had the bright idea that I could just fit all of my books in that, and it would be so much easier to pack. So I got
Yeah.
them all in, and then I tried to lift it and realized just how heavy books are. So
Oh man, the things we learn about moving, right?
so many moves over the
I remember trying
years.
to move in and out of my college dorm multiple times. I had like a little Chevy pickup truck and I was like filling every nook and cranny with all of my laundry.
S10.
Yeah, right. It does not work. There are better ways to to move in
These
and
are
out of a
great little
dorm
trucks. I wish they
than
still
how I
made
did it.
little. I wish they still made little pickup trucks. I'd probably have one myself.
Right?
But I know you had to get going. You had another meeting after this, and so even though we're a sloth on a turtle sometimes, I guess we were all suddenly finding ourselves busy with video conferencing and phone calls and everything else. So,
That's right.
but to kind of continue our tradition, I guess, of talking about the gospel of the weekend, John 10, 1 through 10. I'll be looking at the NAB, and if you want to let it rip on your RSV,
There we go.
I think it's the RSV, right?
It's actually the NRSV. It's the new one. We've come out with the new one.
Can we just go to version numbers? Like it's revised. No,
RSV
it's new
2.0.
revised. Yeah,
2.0.
so stupid. The New American Bible, NAB. Right. For how long is that going to be the case? That it's going to be the new, the
And
NAB?
until there's another one, right? All right. So in any case, here's John chapter 10, verses 1 through 10. Very truly, I tell you, anyone who does not enter the sheepfold by the gate, but climbs in by another way, is a thief and a bandit. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep hear his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes ahead of them. And the sheep follow him because they know his voice. They will not follow a stranger, but they will run from him because they do not know the voice of strangers. Jesus used this figure of speech with them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them. So again, Jesus said to them, very truly, I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and bandits, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters by me will be saved and will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to
Thanks be to
God.
God. Is it my turn to go first?
I
Or yours? I want to say it's mine.
Why don't you go ahead? Yeah, I think it is.
All right. Um, so the first thing I'm thinking as I'm doing this, so you and I have had a little bit of board gaming experience going back and forth
Mhm.
with Laura, and we've been playing Settlers of Catan. I don't know if any of our viewers have heard of that before, but there's very much a bandit and a robber in that game that people are plaguing each other with.
That's right.
So, it's just that popped into my head as I was reading this. But so sometimes this also it kind of ties into preaching. Sometimes a story or an image will come very naturally to your mind, and you think like, Lord, is this for us or is this for everyone? And I'd say like, okay, this is not for everyone. Like then nobody else has played Catan. This is just for me. But I do think that when I read a Bible story, I'm usually trying to empathize with someone. I'm trying to put myself in someone's shoes. And so often when I do that in a story, it's the sheep. And then more and more over the years, you're saying, well, how can I be a shepherd like Jesus was a shepherd? But I actually think this is you got to think like who's telling the story and who is he talking to. And this is Jesus as a shepherd criticizing the work of other shepherds. So we don't here have the sheep with a whole lot of choice in the matter. They're not, this isn't like how to come to Jesus as a sheep. It's very much like Jesus is calling people, and you just come because you're just a sheep. So it's very kind of top down, almost. I'm not talking about fatalism or determinism here, but I almost have that sense taken very narrowly with this passage that, you're a sheep, you're called, that's it. But the focus of the teaching of this story, I think, is on the relationship between the shepherd and the sheep, and whether or not people are going to recognize, and that you can't sort of cheat your way into heaven. You have to do it through the right shepherd. Ultimately, you have to do it through Jesus, and so you can't sort of usurp the role of shepherd. You can't steal it from Jesus. There's these thieves and these robbers, but sheep are not going to listen to them. You can try to carry them away by violence, I guess, the sheep, but ultimately, the true shepherd is the one that is recognized by the sheep. So. But there's also this focus where a thief's coming in because he's hungry. A thief's coming in because he wants to get rich. A thief's coming in because he wants, a nice warm fleece. The shepherd is more long-term, though. Jesus here is ultimately going to go beyond what a shepherd is doing for a sheep, even because he genuinely loves us. But a shepherd, at the bare minimum, wants to make sure that his flock thrives. He's not going to want to kill them all or take all their fleeces. He wants to make sure they're there for the rest of his life. To keep having lambs and keep enduring. So there's this much better relationship between a shepherd and a sheep. And Jesus elsewhere warns people in general about false shepherds. Here he seems to be using it more as a criticism of the Pharisees, and they're just too dumb to get it. They don't understand what he is talking about. But he is here saying basically that they're all phonies, and this is why the sheep don't listen, because they recognize these guys are frauds. So if you're listening to this as an average person in the pew, I don't know where that really leaves you, because this is almost like a conversation between shepherds and a warning about bad shepherds. But for me, I think it's a personally, again, is this for us or is this for everyone? The message that I get from this is just that constant focus on what gives life to the sheep, and not so much what makes me happy and comfortable, which is that I think challenge that Jesus lays down, not just for everyone, but I think sometimes he's especially tough on religious leaders. He's especially tough on the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and even on his own disciples. We kind of talked a little bit last time about Thomas and the believer. Was that last time, or was that even longer ago now?
I can't. It all blends together. There's the sloth and the and the tortoise again.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. So a bit of a tangent. So somebody was trying to figure out this morning whether they were watching the current video I did today for the mass, or if it was like a previous mass. They said, "Oh, his shirt color is different." That's what they picked up on under the elves. His shirt color is different. So, all right, I gotta pay more attention to what I'm wearing. So yeah, I don't, and this happens sometimes in preaching. I guess you can almost talk about that. I don't really get something from this that's like setting my heart on fire here, that I'm really excited about. So, to be honest, I might even steer away from this passage and look at something else if I had to preach. This might be a chance to talk about just like a more general kind of concept, um, or honestly to pull out a commentary. I've had some really good homilies in the past, but I'm really stuck on a passage and not getting much out of it, and you start kind of reading up on it and digging in. I didn't want to do that today because I feel like this is kind of a chance to get our own thoughts out there, and I didn't want to get into a scholarship contest. But sometimes if I'm stuck, I'll wind up going to a commentary and say like, what's going on at a sort of a deeper level here. It's really the message of John, but I don't have a whole lot, I guess. But such as it is, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. This is also an interesting passage. I mean, I think it's so fascinating. So, I mean, if you look at the lectionary for this Sunday of Easter in all 3 years of the cycle,
Mm-hmm.
it focuses on, I don't know, do you call this like Good Shepherd Sunday or something in the Catholic Church? Some churches, Protestant churches, will call this Good
I
Shepherd Sunday because we always read, like, the psalm is always Psalm 23.
This may very well be. And let me have a look for this. It is Psalm 23. So on this particular site that I am looking at, it doesn't have that. It's kind of like a slang term, I guess. It's sort of an unofficial
Yeah.
feast, but yeah, no, that makes sense. And I'm the good shepherd. I'm the good shepherd. And even the Peter talks about you'd all gone astray like sheep, but you never turned to the shepherd and guardian of your soul. So yeah, I think that's good catch. The connecting theme.
Well, so it's interesting because this little allegory, right? This little parable, or a saying, as John puts it there in verse 6. This figure of speech, is interesting. So, the early church fathers. I mean, maybe in particular. I mean, I'm not sure if everyone would consider Origen a church father, but Origen, he emphasized allegorical readings of scripture passages, so looking at them and like an allegory, just to sort of, summarize that quickly, is a figure of speech, right? Where there are characters or situations that stand for something in the real world, right? So a good example of this is, Pilgrim's Progress, right? So, the main character's name is Christian. He like represents like an every Christian, right? So there's people that he meets in the story that sort of are supposed to represent things in the real world, right? That's an allegory. There are these characters that represent things.
Mm-hmm.
I think Christians in the ancient world, like I'm saying, in particular, Origen, viewed scripture passages that way. What are like
level of
who
interpretation.
is Jesus in this story? Who is
Mm-hmm.
who is the church in this story? Who am I in this story? Kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's obvious. It's more obvious sometimes when Jesus explains it to his listeners. If
Yeah.
something is supposed to be sort of taken that way, or he meant
I
it that
am
way,
the
he
good
sometimes
shepherd.
explains
Yeah,
it.
he'll be very
Yeah.
upfront. Yeah.
So this one is interesting to me, and I'm kind of going outside of the scope of the passage a little bit, because, okay, so like just imagine in your mind the scene that Jesus is depicting here. There's a a sheep pen, right, with a sheep fold in it,
Mm-hmm.
and there is pasture outside that the shepherd takes them out to. But then, so Jesus is saying, okay, so there's a fence and there's a gate, and then there's open pasture. I am the gate,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm also the shepherd, right? So it's almost like
Right.
he's putting himself into this parable in lots of different ways, and
Mm-hmm.
in a way that is, sometimes I'm not sure how to make sense of it. It's a little confusing,
Mm-hmm.
but on the other hand, maybe maybe there's something to it. Trying to think about is that Jesus could be both of those things. And what does it mean for Jesus to be the gate versus the shepherd? And maybe what times in our lives is he the gate and the shepherd? So one thing I was thinking of was the way that uh, ancient gates, like sheep pens, like this, a fenced in sheep grazing area like
Mm-hmm.
this. My mind usually goes to what I'm familiar with now,
Mm-hmm.
like a modern fence with a modern gate kind of thing. Um, but in the ancient world, they built these types of fences with stone. I mean, there were stone fences, and a gate. I think more often than not wasn't actually like a door; it was just an opening. And so when Jesus talks about, there's the gatekeeper who opens the
Oh.
gate to let the shepherd in. So what he probably means there is not, just somebody who's like standing guard to like swing open a door or something, but uh, they still do this actually in that part of the world. That small opening, a person has a job of just like sort of hunching down in the middle of this like little opening. And so they just like sit there or stand there or lie there, and their body is the
So
barrier
you
between,
are the
like,
gate.
yeah, like
Okay.
the barrier between
Like
the
a
two
bouncer or
zones
something.
inside the fence. Yeah, exactly. So, but then, okay, so I think that person there is the gatekeeper, right? That's the
Okay.
gatekeeper, the one who's sort of standing guard of the gate. The gate is the opening. So, I don't know. This is going to seem weird, but
Mm-hmm.
this is how I'm thinking about it. Um, like who is the gatekeeper, right? Like if, in this story, Jesus identifies himself as the gate.
Okay.
Who is the gatekeeper?
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. That's sort of a an interesting question to me. Like, is it possible to come up with an answer to that question? Are is God the gatekeeper? In some sort of like Trinitarian sense, is there some kind of uh, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit moment happening here, that Jesus the Son is the gate and some other person of the Trinity is the gatekeeper? I don't have an answer for this, so I'm kind of going to end up going nowhere with my
I'm even
comments here,
wondering,
but
where I was thinking of that is the he has a lot of vineyard parables, a lot of sheep parables, a lot of vineyard parables, but
mhm.
the tenants who did a lousy job, that wouldn't give up the produce at the proper times. Because so here he's using this as sort of a rebuke of the Pharisees, but did they have some responsibility to care for things in his absence? If it says that the gatekeeper opens it for him, that's the presumption that the gatekeeper's doing his darn job,
Yeah,
maybe he's faulting the Pharisees here for not opening up for him, now that he has arrived as the shepherd. But again, he's kind of laying out the ideal here. Pharisees are obviously not living up to that.
yeah, yeah. That's interesting. Like, is it possible that maybe, I don't know, other religious leadership is supposed to be the gatekeeper in this sense? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the gatekeeper is going to allow the sheep in and out, or you know, uh, only for the true shepherd, and only will allow the true shepherd to come in and out, kind of thing. Like, I don't know if there's something to be said about that. I think maybe we could get lost in the weeds there. I know
Yeah, that's
I'm kind of
also
starting to
also
get
happening.
I'm starting to get that a
Well,
little lost in the weeds there.
one
But
of my favorite,
um,
in a commentary. It's Jesus and after the resurrection, and they throw your nets off the side and pull up a catch, and they have 153 large fish. I think is the number for that. And I remember looking at that in the commentary. I'm like, what's the meaning of this?
yeah,
153. It doesn't divide up evenly into anything. Well, 153 large. And the commentary basically said it doesn't seem to mean anything. It's possible they just pulled up a lot of fish.
yeah,
It was like, in that particular case, there didn't seem to be a deeper meaning. just a lot of
Yeah.
fish.
Just a lot of fish. Yeah,
And that doesn't
right.
mean that there isn't a deeper meaning to be found out there. So maybe somebody's figured it out. But sometimes Jesus is just talking about being a great shepherd, and hey, they've got gatekeepers. So here's a gatekeeper in the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes a cigar is just a
I
cigar.
think I think the I think the I think the main point that he's obviously making here, though, is this kind of comparison against himself and these thieves, which I think it's obvious, as you've already mentioned. He's comparing himself to the Pharisees. I mean, uh, this is a pretty like harsh reprimand. He's calling them thieves and bandits who are only seeking to steal, kill, and destroy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Jesus doesn't call himself in the following passage the only shepherd. He calls himself, the good shepherd, right? Of all of the shepherds, like, Jesus is the good shepherd, and kind of compares himself in a way to make that clear, right?
Mm-hmm.
That these other people trying to be shepherds are actually thieves. And I guess here's the thing that I was thinking about, like, what does it mean in this story for a thief to steal, kill, and destroy a sheep? The shepherd is trying to care for them. I mean, who knows what they would have been raising the sheep for? Whether it was wool, milk, or meat, or sheep skin. I mean, who knows what they were doing? But they had a purpose, right? And they were trying to care for them in order for the sheep to sort of live out their purpose. And the thief, though, was just coming to take for, like, himself, right? Was just coming to take for himself. And I think this is the comparison that Jesus is trying to make, that the good shepherd is trying to, give that, like, abundant life to the sheep, whereas the false shepherd, or, the thief, is only trying to sort of extort out of the sheep, or, get out of the sheep what will benefit him. And I think a good example of this is what happens right before chapter 10, where, Jesus heals this blind person. And I mean, it's a great miracle, a great display of, like, God's goodness and love. And what do the Pharisees do? They kick him out of the temple, right? Because it did not work for them, for their goals. And I think, at least for me, this is an encouragement to us all right now, maybe to all of the people trying to influence us right now. Because I don't know if Dan, you have been getting, like, tons of emails about stuff like, this is a crazy, situation, this pandemic. I have the secret to help you, like, like, be the best. I mean, I get a lot of emails like, buy my product and, like, you will save your church. Or something, like your church can survive this pandemic if you do this thing, right?
But first, give me money.
Yeah, it's like there are a lot of people vying for our attention, and I think what Jesus is trying to show us here is, like, those who are emulating the good shepherd are doing it for the benefit of the sheep, right? Those who try to lead for their own benefit, or to get something for themselves out of it, are like the thieves and the bandits. And I think if we were to align ourselves one way or the other, I would want to be, I would want to be with the good shepherd, doing what the good shepherd does in this story. So I think this is a encouragement to take account, maybe, to the influences in our lives right now, and see who is trying to, like, really benefit us, and who is maybe trying to benefit themselves by somehow involving us in their right. Yeah. So this is a weird passage. That's kind of where my mind went, though, as I was reading through this.
there's like one more thing that occurs to me kind of, and I don't know if we've really talked about this in the past as we're reading this, and I take this for granted sometimes. I think as Christians, we try to be good people, we try to be nice people, we try to be empathetic people, we try to care for other people, especially those that most need help. We just sort of take it for granted, and even if we can't live up to that, we reasonably expect, I think, that's what Christianity is asking us to do. We're supposed to be nice people and kind people. And if you're going to communicate with someone, you want to be understood, and generally you want to put them in the kind of mind frame that they can do that. Like you want to speak English if they speak English. You want to go to them when they're not in a bad mood. Especially if you need a favor. So we have all these little rules. Social rules, religious rules, whatever, that are for making friends and influencing people. Jesus does not do that here. And I think that maybe is one of the most startling things for me in passages like this. He's not trying to win them over. You could even say he's not trying to communicate to them, in a sense, because they don't understand what he's saying. They're getting the tone of it, I would bet. But when he shows up and he calls people, fools or dummies, or in this case, thieves and robbers, like, it's very clear he's not trying to make them happy. He's not trying to flatter them. I mean, maybe somebody listens to this and is like, oh my gosh, my whole life I thought I was a good person and I'm actually a robber. It could happen. But I think this is almost like inflammatory or incendiary language, and I think maybe this is a little bit more for the bystander who's watching these two people get in this argument and then picking a side. Oh wow, I can't believe somebody's daring to call them robbers. They treated me badly, but did they do this to everybody? So it's sort of I think of this a lot with arguments on the internet. You get into an argument with somebody on the internet, who wins? I don't know. I've never won an argument on the internet.
It's impossible.
It's impossible. You're not going to persuade anybody. They're not going to vote for the other guy. They're not going to see your point of view. But sometimes other people are watching, and how you choose to conduct yourself in that moment is very important. And so
that's interesting.
Jesus here, he deliberately uses pretty inflammatory language. He's not being nice here. He's not being polite here. He's being very candid. He doesn't like these people. He doesn't like what they're doing, and he's going to tell other people about it. Is he angry? I don't know. Maybe it's fair to call that. I mean, the thieves, robbers, pretty strong language, technically accurate. Okay. So what's the point of talking to someone like this? When is it appropriate to talk to someone like this in a Christian context? I don't usually see him doing this to anyone other than religious authorities. I don't even think to political authorities he's that tough.
Right. Which is hard to understand, isn't it? But I
By the way, I guess not asking for hate mail as a pastor, as a sheep. If you want to send me hate mail, fine, I'll read it. But I think that's something
you are making a good case for justifying Twitter wars.
But I think if we're gonna take this passage seriously, and if we're talking about who do you identify with? Am I a sheep? Sometimes I am. Am I a shepherd? Sometimes I am. Am I trying to be like Jesus? Hopefully, yeah. And sometimes I think that means raising your voice, and I think that's also what we see here.
Yeah, and I think I take your point in particular because of what has just like immediately preceded this. That story with the Pharisees, like excommunicating a person who was just healed of blindness, and Jesus is basically in this very, as you're saying, incendiary way, telling this parable in order to say what seems very very bluntly, like, hey, I hope everyone knows, like, these guys are thieves and bandits who are only out to kill and destroy. And like, this is not the work of God. This is the work of thieves and bandits who have like infiltrated the sheepfold, and like, you just need to be aware. Which in itself is an admonishment. Don't be like them.
Yeah. Yeah, don't be like these guys. And it's an important enough message to get across that he doesn't mind being a little rude about it. And more to the point, there's Lent's behind us, all right? We just got through Lent. And Easter is going by so quickly. There's so many reasons why Jesus died and so many things that came out of that. But I think one of the most immediate reasons why he died is that he was willing to be very obnoxious or troublesome to some very important people. That's what was going through their head as they killed him. God has his own plans. Jesus has his own plans. But what led to this was Jesus being willing to irritate these guys for a good reason. So anyway,
that's a helpful note to end on, right there.
I just saw a quote on Facebook from a Jesuit. It said something like, if you want to follow Christ, you have to be willing to look good on wood, or something like that. Or you better look good on wood. And this is a guy that was like, arrested and things like that. Like he was willing to go to some pretty extraordinary lengths. But I don't know. It's something to think about. Am I being nice and polite because I care about other people, or just because I don't want people angry at me?
Yeah.
So, yeah. I know you had another meeting to get to, and
yeah, no, this is a good place to end it, I think.
Okay, we're right about the half-hour mark. So, thank you again, everyone, for watching. Aaron, always a pleasure. Really enjoyed doing these. And,
always.
We'll record next week, and I should have this up tomorrow morning, I think. So.
Great.
All right. Take care then.
See you, everyone.